Let's talk about diastasis healing. Now, diastasis healing can be a very involved process, but let's take a step back and talk a little bit about finding that sweet spot with overload, because how much you overload is incredibly important for how the tissue is going to respond. So at different points in the healing process, you're going to need a different amount of stimuli. So maybe newly postpartum, when the tissue is very vulnerable to overload, you want to be extra careful to not load too much. So think about this as finding that sweet spot for overload where you give it just a little bit to say, hey, nudge, nudge, I'm going to want you to remodel, but you don't overdo. So that's a story I hear a lot from women as they went to some class, some fitness class, and they did entirely too much ab work, and they were 8 weeks postpartum, and their diastasis went from 1 finger to 4 fingers wide. I hear this story all the time because they did too much. Now, likewise, I'll also get people in to see me who are 8 months postpartum and they're scared to do planks. They're scared to twist. They're scared to overload their fascia and their abdominal wall because they're scared about making their diastasis worse. And I'm like, now is the time. We are going to overload, but we are going to do it safely and within reason so that we're not creating more pressure out in that area. We're making sure we contain the pressure, but we're giving the tissue enough stimulation for it to want to remodel, because fascia can be a little stubborn, right? We got to kind of poke it a little and be like, come on, you need to step up. You need to change so that you can become stronger to help support this area. And so if we never stimulate it to become stronger, it's not going to remodel. And the one thing we do know about fascial remodeling is it takes a long time. It can take years. People will continue to get remodeling years down the road. All right, so it does require some patience, all right? But just keep that in mind when you're thinking about how hard should you overload if you have diastasis, and that is going to depend a lot on how your diastasis is testing, how it's presenting with containing pressure, and kind of where you are along that healing spectrum too. The further along you are, the more you can get away with. All right, so keep that in mind for your exercise routine.